Do you need therapy for social anxiety? Well, I'm going to be a little nitpicky here because the word need in my office relates to survival. And while maybe you don't need therapy to survive social anxiety, you may benefit from it. And that's what I want to talk about today is looking at social anxiety through the lens of therapy and how maybe to make a decision if now's the right time to get into counseling, to get into therapy. So again, the word need, maybe in some circumstances you do need therapy. There's a risk to safety or there's some other confounding variables that you really do need therapy. You need professional support, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame necessary there. However, for the vast majority of people, going to therapy is going to be a choice. And so let's talk about some of the ways that I've seen people experience social anxiety that come into my office. So, these are things that I've talked about before. And if you need help remembering any of these, you resonate with them, I've listed them all in my blog. And in fact, I'm going to read some of the questions verbatim today. I'll link that below in the description. Really quickly here, what is social anxiety? Social anxiety is a pervasive or consistent fear of critical evaluation in a social context. That is a broad category, even though it sounds specific. There are specific fears or themes that we explore in therapy to be able to understand your unique social anxiety. So for example, maybe there's a really strong fear of being wrong and being made fun of if you're wrong and not being good enough or worthy of love if you're wrong. And so your worth is built up in being right. And anytime that you risk being wrong or you talk about something that's not right, or you're going to talk to someone that has very strong opinions about something and you're like, I don't know how they're going to receive this, that can be a source of social anxiety. And in therapy, we'll look at the themes and in the context of your life and how those impact your overall well-being. So I want to list here some signs that it may be time for therapy. There's going to be a few things that overlap as I go through these categories, and that's neither good nor bad. I just want to make sure that these are thoroughly discussed. So I'm going to read some questions. The first category is avoiding social situations. Again, this can seem like a broad category of things when in reality there's unique reasons as to why, the intent of why you would avoid that certain circumstance. But broadly speaking, do you find yourself declining invitations or avoiding events because you're afraid of feeling anxious or doing something embarrassing that would be judged? Do you have excuses pre-prepared to avoid events? How does anxiety prevent you from doing things like grocery shopping or traveling like you want to? Do you struggle to apply for jobs? Do you struggle to choose a career or job based on your passion rather than the amount of socializing required? Do you find phone calls and emails to be particularly imposing? Have you attended school, trade school, or college like you want to? Do you struggle with turning in assignments on time because of loops of perfectionism, that it's not good enough, you're not ready to be vulnerable, and then you passed a deadline, and now it's really hard to turn things in? Do you wait for other people to ask questions in classes and hope that your questions will be asked by someone else? What happens if no one asks? If you go somewhere, how often and intense are your cringes? Those visceral feelings, oh, why did I do that thing? Oh, they're thinking about that. Oh, I made a mistake. Or all these shameful, critical statements that we make. Do you use your phone as a shield when you're out and about? These are ways that we avoid social situations. There's behavioral avoidance, and then there's also experiential avoidance. The behavioral avoidance are things like downright not going or avoiding social experiences, having excuses ready. And experiential avoidance are like when you're going, but you're using your phone as a shield or you're avoiding eye contact, which I know you're not doing on purpose. Next category are physical symptoms of anxiety. Now, these are going to be unique to each person, but overall, our nervous systems act very similarly. Sometimes I have people that say, I don't have any anxiety. Well, if you have a central nervous system, you have anxiety. It's our awareness and relationship with those sensations that determines whether or not it's anxiety. So these physical symptoms can be heart racing, palm sweating, hands shaking, voice trembling, blushing in the face, etc. And do you feel these when you speak in front of people or meet someone new? Do you feel these for normal routine meetings, classes, etc.? Do you dread shaking hands? And really commonly, do you use substances to feel less anxious? These are all, again, reasons or themes and intent that go behind social anxiety in ways that you may know it's time to get help so you don't feel those, or you have a different relationship with feeling those. I know before I make any of these videos, I feel many of these, and I also know it's going to be an opportunity to grow when I'm editing. So we look at different ways on how to incorporate these normal, healthy human sensations and still proceed forward with a high quality of life. So if any of these things are getting in the way of a higher quality of life, it may be time to get some help. Another category of rumination. Rumination just means a lot of thinking, and in particular, this is a constant worry about judgment. Are you always second guessing yourself? Are you consistently fearing you've said or done something embarrassing, that people are thinking about you behind your back? They're maybe even scheming behind your back. And how does this impact what you do? How does this impact who you talk to, what things you try, what occupation you're in, what business you're going to build, what friendships you're going to make? The next category is struggling at work and school. And even though we've kind of briefly touched upon this, getting more in particular, there's a wealth of research out there that we can understand now how intimidating work and school can be. So much so that a significant of people, even though they choose a career path that may require advanced education, are significantly less likely to go to college or graduate school. I have several clients that really have a passion for a certain major, and then they go there and on orientation day they decide to drop out. It's too much. They don't feel like they can succeed in a dorm environment. They are intimidated by the prospect of a roommate. And a lot of their decisions are made upon the fears despite the passion being there. Even the academic ability to be there, the fears get in the way of living. And if that's you, it may be time to get some help. I have several clients in my case that have started businesses, gone back to school, changed careers, because they're able to reassociate or develop a new relationship with their anxiety and follow their passions. Very cool stuff. Procrastination at school or work can be a reflection of social anxiety as well. We already talked about a little bit of the perfectionist cycle, but even further there, procrastination is continuing to kick the can, waiting for things to be right or orderly or certain before you act on them. That doubt creeps in the back of your head that I don't think this is the right time. Maybe this isn't for me. This is for them, but not for me. Job interviews are a really critical time for evaluation, and an interesting thing that I've noticed in my practice is some people with social anxiety are unfazed by interviews. They're like, I'm probably not going to get the job, and I'm never going to see them again, so this doesn't really bother me. Whereas other people are paralyzed at it. They don't want to choose a career path or occupation or apply for jobs at an entry level because of that moment of they're going to hurt me. Last category here for us to review is impact on relationships. This is really, beyond all the other stuff that is really important in a higher quality of life, we are social creatures. And this is where the paradox of social anxiety is so powerful. I have so much empathy and respect for extroverts that struggle with social anxiety. My goodness, you get energy from being socialized, and it's terrifying. It's so hard to go do. And how drained you may feel because you're spending so much time alone. It's no shock that there's a strong correlation with depression and social anxiety, and also alcohol use and PTSD. While we're talking about common patterns, those are for other videos. Regardless, let's look at impact on relationships. Are your personal relationships affected because you're avoiding gatherings, you're finding it hard to connect with friends or family, and the reason for this lack of connection or struggles with connection are all related to anxiety, fears of judgment? Sometimes we can have a little bit of paradoxes here where you may not have trouble making new friends, it's maintaining the friendships that's the challenge. Or maybe the inverse of it's really hard to make new friends, but you have a core group that you've held on to for a long time. Maybe even there's another category, I've seen this often, where you have a core group of friends, 3 to 5 friends that have been there for a really long time, but there's this constant doubt that you're good enough to stay in this friendship. You don't believe that they're really there for you because of you. You have this underlying theme here that they're abandoning you at all stages, even though they're there all the time, maybe not as much as you want to. How can therapy help? This is our final category here, and the way that I've chosen to practice is following what's called acceptance commitment therapy. Now, if you use any AI or Google, it's going to tell you CBT, and certainly that is what research would suggest. There's a bit of a bias in our field, though. It's really oversaturated with CBT research. So acceptance commitment therapy is actually a branch of CBT, except it goes a little bit more into nuances and allows mindfulness, which they've also created a branch of mindfulness-based CBT. But without getting into the nitty-gritty, I like acceptance commitment therapy because it gives a framework and a structure on how we can operate together. We'll teach the themes on acceptance and commitment therapy as we go about developing a relationship, and there's other eclectic tools that we'll use. For more information, take a look at my video last week that talked on how I specifically practice. Essentially, what happens is, regardless of the modality that you're going to experience, if you choose to go to therapy, you're going to have most of your time outside of the therapeutic office. And when you come to the office, you'll talk about experiences either from your past, present, or fears about the future, and you'll get tips, skills, or different experiences that help you heal from some of those things and think about or create a neural pathway for a new way of operating. And as you go about life, you'll create new neural pathways, new ways about thinking and feeling and relating with yourself and other people. And that's how therapy is helpful. I have so much respect for people that choose to get help for social anxiety. And I have respect for people who don't, obviously. You're facing the biggest fear, the core of social anxiety when you reach out for a consultation call. I try to make mine as easy and comfortable as possible. I'm still required by my ethics board to have these phone calls and have these screening conversations. And so I don't charge for them. Again, I want to make it as easy as we possibly can because I know it's really hard. It's not lost on me that you don't have to be sober to get help for addiction. You have to face your biggest fear to get help for social anxiety. You don't have to change anything for depression to go get help. You do have to change the way you think or relate to yourself in order to find the courage to make that initial phone call. It's really challenging, and it's not a shocker that the average delay in treatment time is 15 to 20 years, and I'm on a mission to change that. So if you are in the state of Texas and you'd like help with social anxiety, please don't hesitate to give me a call wherever you're at in your stage of change. And lastly, if you're outside of Texas and you're wanting to go through with therapy and it's really hard to make that step, you're welcome to start with me and we can have a phone call and I can teach you what questions to ask and understand where you're coming from and reinforce, hey, this is a good idea. You can go do this thing. I believe in you. I don't know you, but I believe in you. And we'll talk about the different ways of navigating this mental health field, who to look for, what questions to ask to make sure you're a good fit. I've had many people on my case who would come to me and say like, well, I was seeing somebody for social anxiety before. They said it on their profile. I just didn't make any progress. And they're grateful to seeing somebody that's got a deep passion for helping people with social anxiety. I love it so much. I've made it a part of my entire research in my doctoral program. In particular, applying ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, for people with social anxiety to help them re-engage with life, to increase their quality of life and lower that delay in time to treatment. So, is therapy right for you? Well, that's going to come down to an individual decision. What quality of life are you living? Is it a high quality of life? Is it a low quality of life? Is the biggest barrier to living higher quality of life social anxiety? Are any of the questions that I went through today resonating with you? And if you need any further help, you're not ready for therapy, I have plenty of free resources on my website. There's a social anxiety survival kit, as well as a whole page on free gifts, several different handouts and tools to use to get help. When in doubt, begin counseling today. Thanks so much and take care.